Today, we're making one very useful part of Spanish feel easy and natural. The past perfect, el pluscuamperfecto. Don't worry about the fancy name. The real idea is simple. It's the tense for what had happened before another moment in the past. That's it. One past action happened first, and then another past action happened later. So imagine a timeline. First event, then second event. Spanish uses había plus a past participle to show that first, earlier event. Think of había as a little sign that says already in the past, and the participle is the action word. Comido, salido, visto, hecho, hablado. So había comido means had eaten. Había salido means had left. Había visto means had seen. Había hecho means had done or had made. A quick memory trick: if English says had plus verb, Spanish often says había plus participle. Had eaten, había comido. Had left, había salido. Had seen, había visto. Nice and neat. Let's make it real right away. Listen to this. Ya había comido cuando llamaste. I had already eaten when you called. The call happened in the past, llamaste. But the eating happened even earlier, había comido. That timeline matters. If you can picture 2 points in the past, you can usually choose this tense correctly. How do you say I had already eaten when you called in Spanish? Ya había comido cuando llamaste. Ya había comido cuando llamaste. Good. Notice ya, already, often appears with this tense because we're talking about something completed before that later past moment. Let's build the pattern. For most situations, you'll use forms of haber in the imperfect. Había, habías, había, habíamos, habían, plus the participle. For this lesson, the stars of the show are había, habíamos, and habían because they come up constantly in storytelling. Here are some high-frequency participles you'll actually use. Comido, eaten, vivido, lived, hablado, spoken, terminado, finished, salido, left, hecho, done or made, visto, seen, escrito, written, vuelto, returned, dicho, said, abierto, opened, roto, broken. Some are regular, some are irregular, but many common stories rely on these exact forms. A practical shortcut: if the infinitive ends in R, the participle usually ends in ado, like hablado, llegado, terminado. If it ends in er or ir, it usually ends in ido, like comido, vivido, salido. Then there are the celebrities, the irregulars everybody knows. Hecho, visto, dicho, escrito, vuelto, muerto, puesto, abierto, roto. Now let's compare two sentences. Llegué a la estación. I arrived at the station. El tren ya había salido. The train had already left. The arrival is one past moment, but the train leaving happened before that, so Spanish marks it with había salido. How do you say she had left before the rain started in Spanish? Había salido antes de que empezara la lluvia. Había salido antes de que empezara la lluvia. Nice. And here's a tiny side note. You might also hear antes de que empezara a llover, before it started to rain. That version is very natural too. Spanish often gives you two smooth ways to say nearly the same thing. Let's keep the timeline visible. I want you to almost draw it in your mind. First, había perdido las llaves, had lost the keys. Later, no pudo entrar, couldn't get in. Había perdido las llaves, así que no pudo entrar. He had lost the keys, so he couldn't get in. Cause in the past, then result in the past. That's where this tense shines. How do you say, we had never seen that movie in Spanish? Nunca habíamos visto esa película. Nunca habíamos visto esa película. Perfect. Nunca works beautifully here. Nunca habíamos visto, we had never seen. You can think of it as opening a past window and saying up to that point in the past, not once. Now here's a really practical distinction. Spanish has he comido, I have eaten, and había comido, I had eaten. The first one connects to now in some way, depending on region and context. The second one connects to another point in the past. If the story is anchored in yesterday, last night, when I arrived, when she called, before the meeting, then had done something often means había plus participle. Try this one. How do you say they had finished the work before noon in Spanish? Habían terminado el trabajo antes del mediodía. Habían terminado el trabajo antes del mediodía. Excellent. Habían terminado. Before noon is that later reference point inside the past. Let's add some common story connectors because they make this tense easier to use naturally. Cuando, when. Antes de, before. Después de, after. Porque, because. Ya, already. Todavía no, not yet. Nunca, never. Examples. Cuando llegué, ya habían cerrado la tienda. When I arrived, they had already closed the store. Estaba nerviosa porque no había estudiado. She was nervous because she hadn't studied. Todavía no habían llegado cuando empezó la película. They still hadn't arrived when the movie started. And yes, the negative is easy. No había comido. Had not eaten. No habíamos hablado. We had not spoken. How do you say I was tired because I had slept badly in Spanish? Estaba cansado porque había dormido mal. Estaba cansado porque había dormido mal. Great. Dormido comes from dormir, to sleep. Another useful irregular participle to keep in your pocket. Now let's do a mini memory aid. Imagine the past perfect as the backstage tense. The action happened before the scene we are currently talking about. The main scene is in the past, but the past perfect tells us what had already happened backstage. If the simple past is the movie scene, había plus participle is the flashback that explains it. Let's hear several fast examples. No quiso cenar porque ya había comido. He didn't want dinner because he had already eaten. Estaban felices porque habían encontrado al perro. They were happy because they had found the dog. No entendí el chiste porque no había oído la primera parte. I didn't understand the joke because I hadn't heard the first part. Llegamos tarde porque el autobús había salido sin nosotros. We arrived late because the bus had left without us. That last one is rude, but grammatically useful. How do you say they hadn't arrived yet when the movie started in Spanish? Todavía no habían llegado cuando empezó la película. Todavía no habían llegado cuando empezó la película. Very good. Todavía no is a great phrase to memorize as a chunk, not yet. Now let's talk about common mistakes, the ones learners actually make. Mistake 1, using the past perfect when there is no earlier past action. If you just want to say I ate and then I left, and you're simply listing events, simple past often works fine. Comí y me fui. Use había comido when you need that before another past moment feeling. Ya había comido cuando llegaste. Mistake 2, forgetting the participle and trying to conjugate the second verb. Not había comí. Not habían salieron. It should be había comido, habían salido. Haber carries the tense. The participle stays in that fixed form. Mistake 3, mixing up había with tenía. English says I had eaten, but Spanish does not use tenía here. Tenía means possessed or had in the sense of ownership or state in many cases. For had eaten, had seen, had finished, use había, not tenía. So había visto, not tenía visto, in normal standard usage. Mistake 4, agreement. With haber, the participle usually does not change for gender or number. So it's había terminado, habían terminado, not habían terminados. Nice and simple. Now let's make this feel more alive with a short story. First, I'll read the whole story in Spanish. Just listen for the earlier actions and the later past moments. Cuando Marcos llegó al aeropuerto, el avión ya había salido. Había salido de casa muy tarde, porque no había encontrado su pasaporte. Cuando por fin lo encontró, ya habían cerrado la carretera principal. Tomó un taxi, pero el conductor había elegido una ruta más larga. Al final, Marcos perdió el vuelo, pero descubrió que la aerolínea ya le había enviado un mensaje. En el mensaje decía que el vuelo llevaba 1 hora de retraso al día siguiente. Ahora vamos línea por línea. Cuando Marcos llegó al aeropuerto, el avión ya había salido. Había salido de casa muy tarde, porque no había encontrado su pasaporte. Cuando por fin lo encontró, ya habían cerrado la carretera principal. Tomó un taxi, pero el conductor había elegido una ruta más larga. Al final, Marcos perdió el vuelo, pero descubrió que la aerolínea ya le había enviado un mensaje. En el mensaje decía que el vuelo llevaba 1 hora de retraso al día siguiente. Did you hear how narrative this tense is? It gives background, explanation, and the hidden earlier events that make the story make sense. Let's do a few more quick ones, because repetition is your friend here. How do you say, I had done my homework before dinner, in Spanish? Había hecho la tarea antes de cenar. Había hecho la tarea antes de cenar. How do you say, we had spoken with her before the meeting in Spanish? Habíamos hablado con ella antes de la reunión. Habíamos hablado con ella antes de la reunión. How do you say, he hadn't seen the email in Spanish? No había visto el correo. No había visto el correo. Excellent. And one tiny vocabulary detour. Correo can mean mail or email, depending on context. If you want to be very explicit, you can also say correo electrónico, but in everyday speech, correo often does the job. Here's a final pattern tip. If you see a sentence with when, because, before, already, not yet, and all of it is clearly in the past, ask yourself, do I need to show that one action happened earlier than another? If yes, there's a good chance Spanish wants había plus participle. So let's wrap it into one easy formula you can remember while walking, driving, or making coffee. Earlier past action, había, habíamos, habían plus participle. Later past action, often simple past, like llegué, llamó, empezó, cerraron. Example, ya había comido cuando llegaste. Earlier, había comido. Later, llegaste. That's the whole engine. Before we finish, one last round in your head. How do you say, I had already eaten when you called, in Spanish? Ya había comido cuando llamaste. Ya había comido cuando llamaste. How do you say, they had finished the work before noon, in Spanish? Habían terminado el trabajo antes del mediodía. Habían terminado el trabajo antes del mediodía. How do you say, I was tired because I had slept badly, in Spanish? Estaba cansado porque había dormido mal. Estaba cansado porque había dormido mal. Beautiful. So here's your recap. The past perfect in Spanish is for what had happened before another moment in the past. Build it with había, habíamos, habían, and a participle. Había comido, habíamos visto, habían salido. Use it in stories, explanations, causes, and flashbacks. Keep the timeline in mind, and the tense becomes much easier. And honestly, if you can picture 2 dots on the timeline, you can use this well. 1 dot is earlier, 1 is later. Spanish rewards that clarity. You're not just learning a grammar tense, you're learning how to tell better stories in Spanish, and that is where the language starts to feel alive. Keep listening for this pattern, keep using it in small sentences, and it'll become automatic faster than you think.